Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Good evening and welcome tonight. President Muhammadu Buhari appeals for peace and brotherhood as the nation awaits the report of the Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry into the shooting incident at the Lekki Toll Plaza on October 20th. Governors of Southwest states say the attack on government and private property in Lagos is a coordinated attempt to weaken the economy of the region. Rampaging youth continue their looting spree in the nation's capital and some other states, including the house of former House Speaker Yakubu Dogara in Jos, the Plateau state capital. While NSAS protests continue outside our shores with a prayer march in London and a rally in Houston, Texas. In the wake of the NSAS protests and the looting witnessed across the country, President Muhammadu Buhari has assured that he will assist the nation to give justice to peaceful protesters who lost their lives, security men who were murdered, and property owners whose assets were vandalized and looted. In a statement issued by the presidential spokesman, Garba Shehu, the president advises that peace, brotherhood, and intercommunal harmony are central to our ethos and urges Nigerians not to turn against one another in hate. The statement reads in part, while the administration has, for its part, blocked so many means of looting public money in a war against corruption, it is the expectation that all civil authorities, community and religious leaders in the country must rise against the organized looting and plunder we are witnessing in parts of the country. Families must turn back children who bring home unaccounted goods in the same way wives must ask their husbands to return looted items brought home. What is more is that criminal actions, as we have so far witnessed, can weaken and erode the confidence of our people and that of foreign businesses in investing in the economy. Looting and vandalism will hurt trade and investment growth in our country, both large and small industries, as well as our hardworking people in the informal sectors of the economy. President Buhari also condemned hate messages and eviction notices to ethnic and religious groups, asking Nigerians to take pride in the fact that our diverse people have been living with one another in harmony for ages. The right of all citizens to live and work in any part of the country is a constitutional right and will be defended by the government. Meanwhile, governors of Southwest states have described the vandalization of assets in Lagos as a coordinated attempt to weaken the economy of the region. Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu gave the position after an assessment tour of Lagos State today. Apart from the governors, ministers from the region and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, were in the state to inspect level of damage done from the vandalization of public and private property. The governors condemned the widespread violence, adding that there appeared to be an agenda beyond the nationwide NSAS protests against police brutality. One after the other, governors of the Southwest states arrive at the Lagos House Marina to commiserate with their colleague, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, who is most troubled about the level of destruction in the state by rampaging youth who took advantage of the NSAS protests. The governors were not alone, as some ministers from the Southwest region are also here for the same reason. After a brief discussion and a glimpse of some damaged property, they proceed to the street to see things for themselves. The first port of call is the Igboshire High Court.
Okay, Olumide, I didn't even know that Olumide is here with us. Yeah?
I thought you were also a prophet. I saw you a week ago in Abuja. Why didn't you foretell this to me?
Then the Nigerian Port Authority building, as well as the State's DNA and Forensic Center. And finally, at the Lekki Toll Plaza, where Mr. Babatunde Fashola believes he has found evidence that will be useful in investigating the Lekki shooting. Afterwards, they head back to Marina, appealing for peace and assuring the public of bringing the perpetrators to book.
We will be right to say Lagos was turned to a war zone, because the damage could not have been worse than this if we were at war. We call on heads of security agencies to be alive to their obligations to defend lives and properties. We charge relevant security agencies to investigate all cases of violence with a view of identifying the culprits and bringing them to book.
We are sure that all will be well. For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language, so that we can then stand away and begin what I believe will be an investigation which the federal government is also supporting and which the state has started, that would really help us unravel how we got here.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives also came calling, and he describes the destructions as a setback for the country's commercial capital.
And look at the devastation and say we're now at the stage of reconstruction. Reconstruction was a language that was used during the Second World War in Germany. It was a language that was used during the Civil War in Nigeria. I never thought, where we are today, having come this far, that we'll be talking reconstruction again. The governor was telling me just now that it was going to cost about ₦1 trillion to rebuild Lagos. That makes my heart heavy.
With assurances from authorities, Nigerians will be waiting to see how things unfold in the next few weeks, with hope that justice is served. The governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, has lamented the looting of medical equipment and items at the state's medical stores on Saturday. The governor, who in the company of the Minister of Health and Commissioner of Police, Edo State, toured the facility today, he said the looting would have had a huge negative impact on healthcare delivery in the state. The Minister of Health, Osage Hanire, advised those still in possession of usable items return them. He advised against disposing of them indiscriminately.
As you see, it's a medical store warehouse where we keep medicaments and hospital supplies that feed our whole hospital network in the state. And if you understand that the people who attend our hospitals are not the wealthiest in our society, they're the poorest. For people to do this to our healthcare system is essentially very, very, very wicked. By the time we do the assessment, the amount of destruction and theft that will have occurred here will be running into hundreds of millions. This is a healthcare system that is already weak, that we are trying to do all we can to strengthen with the assistance of the federal government and other agencies. For people to now come in and destroy the little we have just tells you that the people who are doing this, who are Clearly, this is clearly not the intentions of the NSAS protesters. It's gone beyond that.
The damage is worth millions, as we have heard, hundreds of millions, probably billion. And the cost in service will be much more than that. And in lives that you would have liked to save, these are all meant to prevent disease, a lot of the vaccines, and to support treatment. And if you take it away from the health system, it's going to have effect and repercussions. So I do hope that this is the very last we shall see in this state.
Meanwhile, the Kaduna state government has reacted to the looting of the office of the National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, in some warehouses by some angry youths in the state. The State Commissioner for Internal Security, Samuel Arwan, in a statement says the looted items, which include expired, prohibited and dangerous drugs, posed a great danger to the health of the people, and therefore warns that persons who consume such drugs are at risk of contracting serious ailments and even death. Mr. Arwan also explains that the management of a food processing company whose stores were looted in Kakuri area of Kaduna South Local Government Council has also disclosed that the stolen grains have been treated with chemical preservatives which render them unsafe for human consumption. He therefore asks residents of Kaduna State to be vigilant and careful about the source of the food and medications they ingest and where they buy them to avoid these dangers.
The government will not and will never sit back and allow this kind of lawlessness in Kaduna State. We would fish them. There is a charge to all the local government chairmen in this, where these places are situated, the traditional leaders in all those places, to fish them out. There are videos all over the place. We know them. They live with us. They must come out. We have to prosecute them. This is not a protest. This is like something else. This is not. So I think the intent behind this, they will have to tell us the intent behind this. You can't go into a place and loot and take office furniture, yank out doors, yank out toilet seats and say you're protesting. That is not a protest.
In Kwara State, the Governor, Abdurrahman Abdurazak, is blaming the actions of the Rapajan youth on those he describes as disgruntled politicians who are bent on discrediting his administration. He made the comments during an inspection tour of some of the places that were looted in the last few days. The places visited by the governor include ShopRite malls as well as the Agro Mall, where materials for flood victims in 4 local government areas were being kept. The governor also announced a 500 million naira donation to victims of lootings.
Some of these businesses you see here, they borrowed money to set them up. They're employing other people, like them, the looters, the hoodlums that came in. They're employing people, they've been enterprising. That's what you want to do in this state. Turn it away from a civil service state into an enterprising state. But you go about damaging properties. Now, at least, you probably get 1,000 people directly and indirectly have lost their job now. The bank is relocating. ShopRite has to restock one way or the other. We have to give them the confidence to come back in here. But we're not going to leave them alone like that. We're going to set up a fund of at least 500 million naira for those that are affected to access. This is barefaced stealing. There's no excuse for what has happened. Some people are trying to play politics with it. This is not the time for politics. It's time to put all hands on deck. It's not just Kwara they want to burn down. They want to burn the whole country down. And I urge all of us to stand up to them.
In part 2 after the break, we'll have more on the looting of warehouses across the country. Plus, overseer of the Citadel Global Community Church, Pastor Tunde Bakare, reiterates his call for restructuring as part of solutions to meeting the agitations of the NSAS protesters. Join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari appeals for peace and brotherhood as the nation awaits the report of the Lagos State Judicial Panel of inquiry into the shooting incident at Lekki Toll Plaza on October 20th. Governors of Southwest states say the attack on government and private property in Lagos is a coordinated attempt to weaken the economy of the region. Rampaging youths continue their looting spree in the nation's capital and some other states, including the house of former House Speaker Yakubu Dogara in Jos, the Plateau state capital. And NSAS protesters continue outside our shores with a prayer march in London and a rally in Houston, Texas. We're in Jos, the Plateau state capital, where some residents have vandalized the house of former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, in the Lamingo area of the metropolis. The rampaging youths who defy the ongoing curfew imposed by the state government broke into the house of the former Speaker and attacked everyone, including his brother. They moved tricycles, furniture, electronics, and other valuables out of the house.
No, if all police go, you know, the judiciary is still there. So the few of you can go. There are not many here, but those people can take control of it.
Meanwhile, the search for COVID-19 palliatives continued in the Federal Capital Territory as some rampaging youth broke into two different warehouses in the nation's capital. Not minding the presence of soldiers and policemen, the youths first broke into a warehouse at Jabi district, close to the Code of Conduct Tribunal, where they helped themselves to various bagged items and stationaries. The situation got worse at another warehouse in Edu industrial area, where some youths who were unable to lay their hands on COVID-19 palliatives, vandalized the place, removing windows and door frames.
The usually quiet Jabi district, housing the headquarters of the Code of Conduct Tribunal and an FCT High Court, comes alive as rampaging youths break into a COVID-19 palliative warehouse in the area.
Even one cup of rice. If you know how to get this one, you don't go believe.
Not minding the presence of armed soldiers and policemen, the youths besieged the warehouse in search of anything they could lay their hands on, including stationaries. After stripping the warehouse bare, the soldiers appealed to the youths to leave the arena. At another warehouse in the Edu industrial area, the rampaging youths also helped themselves with anything they could lay their hands on, while soldiers and policemen maintained peace in order to avoid a stampede. Some of the youths narrate how they located the warehouse.
When this kind of thing happens, this situation, something happen like this, what we say, they break this place. This palliative where we put here, some foodstuff and wrapper, what they put for here. Many of us, we are trying to get inside there so that we can be able to get what to eat.
When we hear Tasha on, we went there, see what happened in the warehouse. They break the warehouse, see many things, grinding machine, rice, beans, spaghetti, indomie, many things there. So as we were trying to pack things there, before army now come in, everybody start running, police and some vigilante, they are there.
One of the youths, however, blames the government for their action.
When we believe, say, one day, judgment go come for them. It does not change. All those things when they hide, when they bring come, say, make them share for people. So for people when need them. Okay, all these things now, they don't keep them. Say they won't share them based on their own greediness.
Although calm has been restored in the area with military air patrol, some of the youths restate their determination to scout for other places where COVID-19 palliatives are being stored. 'Cause 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 'cause
In Taraba State, youths in their numbers have continued to loot warehouses belonging to both private and government officials in Jalingo, the state capital. Channels Television visited some of the scenes in Jalingo where the looting of warehouses is still ongoing without hindrance by security agencies, despite the 24-hour curfew imposed by the government. Hope Afresh Foundation, an NGO belonging to the wife of the state governor, Anna Ishaku, was not spared in the looting as the rampaging youths go for anything they can lay their hands on.
In fact, in the office, everything, the seats, the tables, cushion chairs, television, refrigerators, and what have you, they carted away everything. In fact, even the secret files of our staff, they burnt them inside the office. Because even at the warehouses there where they vandalized, we have some equipments for the mechanical workshop. So they have carted away with some of them. So we are yet to assess the damages, the cost of the damages.
Well, this is nothing short of wickedness because there has never been a time any form of palliative has been brought to this facility, but our office was vandalized. They didn't even leave anything. They took everything. We experienced a huge loss, and we lost a lot of things, worth hundreds of millions of naira.
In Adamawa State, some rampaging youth stormed the various government warehouses in Yola, the state capital, carting away COVID palliatives. Efforts by security operatives to prevent them failed as they overpowered them and broke into the warehouses located in Kwanan Ways along Yola-Ngorore Road. One person lost his life as a result of the stampede, while many others sustained injuries in the process of carting away the palliatives. Meanwhile, the state government has imposed a dusk to dawn curfew throughout the state to curtail the looting of warehouses in some locations in the state capital. Governor Umaru Fintiri made the declaration at a statewide broadcast today, where he directed the movement by all vehicles except those authorized are prohibited as the curfew comes into effect.
We cannot allow hoodlums and misguided elements to operate unchallenged when we are already battling with the challenges of insecurity, kidnapping, cattle rustling, banditry, and farmer herders clashes. In view of the above, I have declared and imposed an indefinite down-to-dusk curfew throughout the state, beginning from 3 o'clock, Sunday, the 25th of October, 2020. Movement by all manners of vehicles, except as authorized, is hereby prohibited as the curfew comes into effect.
The Lagos state government has reviewed the curfew in the state. According to a statement by the Commissioner for Information, Gbenga Omotosho, the curfew will now last from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Meanwhile, the Chief Judge of Lagos, Justice Kazeem Aloba, says all courts in the state which were looted and raised by suspected angry youths will not sit this week, neither will it be available to the public. In a telephone conversation with our judiciary correspondent, Shola Shuyele, the Chief Judge said instead the week will be spent assessing extent of damage and sorting through debris. Last Wednesday, some unknown persons looted and razed the High Court in Igbushiri on Lagos Island. The Magistrate Court in the same Igbushiri area was also affected. Justice Aloba is appealing to members of the public to exercise patience and cooperate with the judiciary while it conducts this assessment. He's promised to give further information on the resumption of affected courts at a later date. The overseer of Citadel Global Community Church, Pastor Tunde Bakare, has once again called for restructuring of the nation as part of his recommendations in solving the current challenges facing the nation. The cleric was speaking while giving his recommendations on how NSAS protests can be turned to progress. During today's service, our correspondent Dari Idowu reports.
You are holy. Yes, you. The image representing the campaign of the past weeks
is the welcoming message into the new church building.
Are you Lord God? Are you Lord Almighty?
It's a special service, and that's obvious with the caliber of guests seated in the church today.
What is happening in Nigeria?
Elder statesmen Ayo Adebanjo, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, and other thought leaders joined the church for the State of the Nation address.
When trouble blows, Jehovah sings.
When trouble blows, like the nation has seen in the past few days, the church sings for peace.
The Lord can calm the troubled soul.
From the peaceful protest to the destructive fury on the streets, the pastor shares his thoughts.
The new Nigerian culture is not defined by antagonism as an end in itself, or looting or pillaging as a solution, but is shaped by willingness to take responsibility, to find new answers to old questions, to refuse to simply accept that this is the best we can do and the best we can be as a people. To this end, rather than destroy, we must build. Rather than revel in attacks on tangible and intangible infrastructure, from buses and police stations to palaces and state-owned cyber assets, we must protect our common patrimony.
The pastor condemns the looting. He says the government has burnt the bridge of trust but can still make amends.
The government must move from commitment to full compliance in the implementation of the 5-for-5 demands of the NSAS protesters and in overhauling our policing architecture. Above all, I strongly recommend that President Muhammadu Buhari should ensure that those who ordered armed soldiers to fire on innocent citizens are fished out and made to face the full weight of the law.
The senior pastor admonishes Nigerians to be wary of ethnic coloration, religious differences, and other divisive means designed to distract them from the real issues of governance, urging the people to keep the hope alive. Dari Idu, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, we'll be looking at more on the NSAS protests holding outside our shores in London and in Houston, Texas. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. Beyond our shores now, the NSAS protests held today in London in solidarity with the ones in Nigeria. Only this time was tagged a prayer march involving thousands raising placards with various inscriptions. Guarded by the Metropolitan Police, they sang gospel songs accompanied by a saxophonist who kept spirits high as they walked through the city, stopping only a few hours later to a general prayer for the country and shouts of hallelujah.
Have mercy, Almighty God. No more bloodshed. 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 If you believe it, shout a new nation. If you believe it, shout a new Nigeria. If you believe it, shout Prince of Peace arise. Prince of Peace arise. At the count of one, we begin to shout hallelujah. When I say one, you will shout hallelujah. And we do that.
And in faraway Houston, Texas, in the United States, some Nigerians resident in the country lent their voice to the calls for reforms in the Nigerian police. They all assembled at Southwest Houston, waving the Nigerian flag and carrying placards with different inscriptions, among which is an inquiry into the shooting of peaceful protesters at the Lekki Toll Plaza.
I love these people. I love the Nigerians. Let's go.
We want a Nigeria that would have good governance. There are a lot of people suffering out there, and we condemn the killings that happened on the 20th. They want to shut us up with a few bullets, but no, that's not going to happen. So the kind of Nigeria I want to see is a Nigeria that has hope for my children. I want to see that my children grow up to go back to Nigeria and be proud of Nigeria and not be here and feel like we don't have a country. Right now, we all feel like we do not have good governance, we do not have good health system, we do not have good educational system, but they want to try to change the narrative. We are the narrative. We are the people that should make things better in Nigeria. And because we have one voice, because of the one voice we have, because of the unity that we have right here, and because we're doing this, things could actually change.
Switch gears now. According to the calendar of the National Bureau of Statistics, the gross domestic product report for the third quarter of this year will be released next month. Now, if this report shows negative growth, it may be a confirmation of a recession. Tonight, Babajide Ogusawo, data and information consultant, will share insights of the possible outcome and reaction to the third quarter GDP report. He joins me now on the news at 10. Always great to see you.
Good evening, Amarachi.
Good evening. You don't come with any good news, I suppose. So if I'm correct, then, the economic growth report of the second quarter of this year was negative of 6%. Then what sort of number should we be expecting this time?
We'll talk about numbers. We'll talk about good news. And certainly, we can't talk about good news without talking about bad news. But tonight, I have this for you because there's one key that can unlock the door of frustration in Nigeria. Correct. There's one key that can open the door to economic growth. There's one key, Amarachi, one key that can unlock the potential of Nigeria's 60 million youths. And tonight, I'd like to put this key and leave this key with you. Now, what is this key? I'll tell you what this key is. But before then, I'd like to talk about the good news and the bad news. So which should we start with, the good or the bad?
Well, give us the bad news before the good news, so we end the night on a more cheery note.
Now, the bad news, which is what you want to start with first, is that the president has presented the budget, but the budget is not the key. Let's take a look at the chart of the week, because the chart of the week will let us know what this key really is. And if we focus on that, here's what you'll notice. It shows that today's Nigeria's economy, yesterday's Nigeria's economy, really hasn't been growing because of the government. It has been growing because of families, private household expenditure, as the economists would like to call it. In other words, family spending, families account for 74% of what we call as today's Nigeria. The spending and all of this budget by the government accounts for only 6% of the size of the economy. You heard me right. Government spending accounts for only 6%. And so, yes, we've seen a 13 trillion naira budget, but even if this budget was 20 trillion naira, it still means that Nigeria's economy will not grow by double digits. In other words, the key to Nigeria's present and the future that I'm placing in your hands is really on the private families, you and I. If we can get more families to spend more, then that is how this economy and this country can really be great. That is the bad news. It is really not about how much the government spends. So we need to make sure that we're not just trying to get the rich to be poorer. We're trying to get the poor to be richer. And once we can do that, that really is the key that I'm placing in your hands.
So how could this key help in reaching double-digit economic growth?
And so it really is by we making sure that we move things much faster. Over the years, and which is what we'll eventually look at when we look at the specific outlook of the third quarter GDP report. The evidence shows that we've been moving extremely slow. And so millions of Nigerians tonight are looking at their time, and it shows, and if you look at yours, it shows 10:40 p.m. Or if the president were to remove his wristwatch, his time really shows 5 p.m. Now, what do I mean by 5 p.m.? The president's 8-year term is right now on 69% of his term. So it is, if this were a clock, for the president, it is 5 p.m. The president is no longer in morning, is right now in the evening, and we can see that soon it will be nighttime. So things really need to move significantly faster for the economy, and really things need to move for private families, because that is really, again, where Nigeria's key is.
So how will they move faster, considering the nation's security challenge, and now with insecurity generally from what has happened, the fallout of what has happened last week?
So the evidence we have shows that the economy has been the driver of national security. So if the economy isn't performing well, then it will affect security. Here's the fact, and this is why we need to pay more attention to data. When the National Bureau of Statistics released the Q2 GDP report, it showed -6% growth rate. That was the slowest growth rate we had seen in this administration. And what often has happened is, yes, we've seen what has happened with not just security in the north and south, but a lot of these events are also really connected to the state of the economy. If you look at what has happened in previous Q3, the previous quarter 3 reports that have been released by the National Bureau of Statistics, here's what you find. And I'd like us to take a close look as we expect this new GDP report. If we take a look at that, the previous reports that have been released by the National Bureau of Statistics, here's what you find. None of these reports have we seen double-digit growth rates, if you take a close look at that. None of these reports have we seen a GDP growth rate that is above that would guarantee a higher standard of living. What we've seen is that the Nigerian economy really needs to put on weight. Quarter 3 of 2015, growth rate of only 2.8%. That went into negative in quarter 3 of 2016. Quarter 3 of 2018, 1.8%. And the last quarter 3 report of last year was only 2.3%. Clearly, with what is in front of you, none of our quarter 3 reports has even hit 3%. What does this mean? It means that it will be nearly impossible for us to see a positive growth rate in the new report that will be coming up. That is nearly impossible, not impossible. But what most analysts and economists are saying is there will most likely be a -4% growth rate, plus or minus a margin of error of 1%. So it's either we're looking at a -3, a -4, or perhaps a -5% growth rate.
Wow.
But in the final analysis, let's not forget what a wise man said. The lack of money is the root of all evil, but also the love of money is the root of all evil, Amarachi.
Thanks again, Babajide.
Please remember to keep your key.
Well,
because really the growth...
You didn't push it all the way, though, but...
That's
okay.
it for you.
Right.
5 p.m., the president's time, 5 p.m.
Right. Thanks again. Thanks again. And thank you, Babajide, for joining us on the news at 10. Well, we do have more stories. Spain has we still do not have some of our local stories now, but Spain has declared a nationwide emergency and nighttime curfew in a bid to control spike in coronavirus infections in the country. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the curfew will run from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. starting today, October 25th, and gives local authorities the authority to ban travel between regions. It comes as COVID-19 cases exceed 42 million and deaths 1.14 million. Here's a global update. Pedro Sanchez's announcement comes after the government held an extraordinary cabinet meeting on the coronavirus situation in the country. In his address, he said citizens were living in an extreme situation and that this was the most serious health emergency the country had witnessed since the approval of the Constitution in 1978 and in the last half-century. The country, like many other European countries, has seen a second wave hit in recent weeks and now has one of the highest number of infections in Western Europe, recording over 1 million on Friday, with the death toll nearing 35,000.
Italy's
Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has been explaining to the nation the new restrictive measures, which stipulates that from Monday, October 26th, all bars and restaurants will have to close at 6 p.m. but they can stay open during the weekend. During a press conference early on Sunday, Mr. Conte said the high number of positive cases on Saturday came very close to 20,000, making contact tracing efforts very problematic. People had protested the restrictive measures, which they say came suddenly, leaving them very little time to reorganize. The number of coronavirus infections in Chile has surpassed 500,000, according to the Health Ministry. The country was among the worst-hit nations in July, ranking only behind Qatar globally for cases per head of the population. Over the past 2 months, it gradually eased lockdowns. Restaurants and bars have opened with limited capacity. Office workers are returning, and some schools have reopened. Finally, in the United States, as more people in the White House test positive for the coronavirus, U.S. infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci says it would be clear whether a COVID-19 vaccine was safe and effective by early December. He also said any significant distribution to the wider populace would not be likely until later in 2021. Pope Francis today expressed his closeness to the Nigerian people during his Angelus at the papal window overlooking St. Peter's Square, hoping for a just end of clashes between police and protesters. His prayers come days after President Muhammadu Buhari called for an end to protests against police brutality after security forces fired on the peaceful, unarmed protesters in the Lekki Toll area of Lagos. It also comes as the nation experiences looting and destruction of public and private property across the nation by some residents and angry youth. The Pope said, "Dear brothers and sisters, I am following with increasing worry the news that comes from Nigeria about the violent clashes recently happened between police forces and some young protesters. Let's pray to God that all kinds of violence is avoided in a constant search for social harmony through a promotion of justice and common well-being." Pope Francis has also named 13 new Roman Catholic cardinals, including 9 under the age of 80, who are eligible to enter a conclave to elect his successor after his death or resignation. The 9 new electors come from Italy, Malta, Rwanda, the United States, the Philippines, Chile, Brunei, and Mexico.
Il prossimo 28 novembre alla vigilia.
Nigeria's High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Kabiru Bala, has made an appeal for improved citizen-to-citizen relations between Nigeria and his host country. He was speaking in Johannesburg as the Nigerian community bid farewell to the outgoing Consul General, Mr. Godwin Adamawa, who also appealed to Nigerians in South Africa to be more involved in the communities they live and work in, to deepen social cohesion and avert tense situations that lead to xenophobic attacks. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, has more.
It was a night of tributes as various Nigerian groupings and individuals turned out as much as COVID-19 would allow to be the Consul General. Mr. Godwin Adamawa, goodbye.
We have gathered here to give honor to whom honor is due and to showcase our respect and appreciation to a man who worked tirelessly to ensure that our people resident in South Africa here received better services and treatment.
It is up to you to spread a story that truly represents who we are as a people.
Many more had a lot to say to and about the man who had overseen the welfare of Nigerians in South Africa for 3 years.
He's a man who is filled with passion for the work of God to advance forward.
Nigeria's High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Kabiru Bala, commended the outgoing Consul General for all he's done, not just for Nigerian citizens, but also his efforts at improving relations between Nigerians and South Africans.
When you look at our relationship with this country, you will see that, yes, at the political level, we have good relations. But when it comes to people-to-people relationship, I think there is a lot that needs to be done.
I am humbled that you will place your faith and trust in me.
The outgoing Consul General, Mr. Godwin Adamawa, quite grateful for all the kind words and gifts he received, says he leaves South Africa with a fantastic learning experience. Earlier, we spoke to him in his office where he appealed to Nigerians in South Africa to live as one, contributing positively to their host communities.
And I also advise them to at least mix up with the community, participate in community projects and discussions, be interested in what is happening in the various communities that you live. That will enable them to identify you as somebody that is different from the few criminals they see on the street.
Mr. Adamawa is expected to formally hand over to his successor, Mr. Abdul Malik Michael Ahmed, on Monday as Nigeria's new Consul General in Johannesburg. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Chief of Staff to U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, Max Short, has tested positive for coronavirus. This was revealed in a statement by Pence's spokesperson. In the statement said Pence and his wife had both tested negative for COVID-19 and they remain remain in good health, and that Pence would maintain his schedule. The news comes as the United States broke its daily record for new coronavirus infections on Friday, as it reported 84,218 new cases due to outbreaks in virtually every part of the country. The spike comes less than 2 weeks before the presidential election on November 3rd and is hitting battleground states such as Ohio, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. In sports news, Super Eagles midfielder Joe Aribo was on the score sheet for his club Rangers FC in the 2-0 win against Livingston FC in the Scottish Premier League earlier this evening. Aribo put Rangers in front at Ibrox as early as the 9th minute for his first goal of the season since returning from injury. Victory saw Steven Gerrard's men move top of the league after reigning champion Celtic could not hold on to a lead earlier when Aberdeen snatched an injury-time equaliser in a 3-3 draw. Former Super Eagles midfielder Ife Ambrose featured for Livingston in the game, coming in as a substitute. Jamie Vardy scored a late winner after coming off the bench as Leicester beat Arsenal at the Emirates earlier today. Alexander Lacazette had an early goal ruled out for offside as the host shaded a tight game before Vardy, who has missed Leicester's last 2 fixtures due to injury, broke the deadlock. Having been introduced in the 60th minute, Vardy headed in from close range after Yuri Tillmans chipped over the top of Sengir's under. Jacob Murphy's late free kick cancelled out Raul Jimenez's strike as Newcastle snatched a 1-0 draw against Wolves at Molineux. Newcastle remain in 14th after the 4th consecutive 1-0 result between the two clubs. Earlier, the last remaining unbeaten record of the English Premier League season ended as leaders Everton crashed to defeat against an impressive Southampton 2-0 at St Mary's. And news just in, the Abia State Governor Okezie Ikpeazu has formally inaugurated a 16-man judicial panel of inquiry to investigate allegations of extrajudicial killings and brutality by security agents in the state. Meanwhile, the Taraba state government has extended the curfew imposed on Jalingo, the state capital, to now run 24 hours until further notice. The state deputy governor, Engineer Haruna Manu, said government has carefully reviewed developments in the last 24 hours and decided to extend the curfew to safeguard lives and property. All law-abiding citizens are advised to stay home to allow security agencies who are under strict instructions to enforce the curfew and equally protect innocent citizens. We do have an update on the Abia story. The Ministry of Homeland Security, Abia State, says it's received intelligence that some persons are planning another spate of protests in Aba and Enumwahe on Monday, October 26th, 2020. They want to warn people not to allow the state to allow the state heal from the series of unwarranted destruction it has faced in this trying period. It says this is a very wrong time for whatever reason to engage in any form of protest. A statement from the government says parents and guardians are advised to call their children and wards to order, as the Minister of Homeland Security will be prepared to protect the law abiding in Abia State. And the main news again. President Muhammadu Buhari today appealed for peace and brotherhood as the nation awaits the report of the Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry into the shooting incident at Lekki Toll Plaza on October 20th. The president's message was contained in a statement issued by his spokesman, Garba Shehu. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night and stay safe.